Hi, I'm Garmbreak1, and this is Midgardia's Cool Crowdfunding Show. I'm here today with Jeff Martin. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty well. So, I here to tell us a little bit about Hell Inc., so why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it is a tabletop RPG that we've got on Kickstarter right now as part of Zine Quest 4. And it is an RPG where you play demons who work in the office that runs hell. Yeah, it's based on a comic that I draw, also called Hell Inc. And it is the business casual role playing experience that nobody knew they needed.
Excellent. So, how did you end up settling on the idea of first a comic about office workers in hell?
Well, the comic came from essentially being bad at having normal jobs, and so uh, the most horrifying horror premise was just an office that you couldn't leave. Because whenever I have had normal jobs, it they make it really easy to just get like weird and existential as I sit here thinking about my own mortality, as I sit in this room for 8 hours, uh, doing very little of value to anybody. Uh, and yeah, so uh, oh god, the first one came out in 2009, so that is infinity ago. Uh, and it was just like a black and white comic that I had written for 24-hour comic day. And then I did a second one, and then kind of flitted off to work on some other stuff. But when I finished the webcomic that I was drawing about space wrestlers, I needed another thing to work on, and I had kept thinking off and on that uh, I liked the premise of Hell Inc., but the two issues that I had drawn now looked really bad compared to how my skill set had changed. So I decided to kind of reformat it as a strip and do it in full color. And that kind of got it started as a webcomic because I wanted to see if I could kind of engineer a situation where I could do a full color digitally lettered strip in about 6 hours. And that was kind of a lot of my projects start with some sort of like skill goal that I'm trying to achieve with it, and that was kind of the goal for this one was to uh, kind of just get better and faster at incorporating digital techniques into the process. And then that's been running since 2018, I want to say.
Which is also infinity ago, basically.
Yeah, didn't feel like it until you know the last few years that have been 40 years.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, that's been running for about 5 years now, and uh, I had written up a a document about turning it into an RPG years ago, uh, and then not really done anything with it. And this project came from a combination of uh, hearing about Zine Quest and thinking that was like pretty cool and having some interest in getting in on that. And uh, just a few months ago, my wife and I had turned the an RPG that we wrote just to play with our friends called Fail Marines into a like a zine and like PDF. And the response to that had actually been really good. Like we ran a session at a local store that nearly filled up for a game that no one had heard of. And yeah, I think like we the first day that we put it on Drive Through RPG, I think we had like 50 some downloads. So that kind of got us in the space of like, oh, like people like it when we do this stuff. Let's do, let's do another one of these for Zine Quest. And then we had a few ideas, but Hellink had the most stuff written for it. And I think the best kind of likelihood of there being a pre-existing audience that we could use to bolster, especially the beginning of a campaign, is where you're leaning a lot on your audience that exists already until you can build up some, hopefully build up some momentum as far as outreach goes. And yeah, so for the past 6 weeks, 2 months, something like that, we have been kind of hard at work adapting Hellink into an RPG. And we're kind of getting close to wrapping up the employee handbook, which is what we're calling the main kind of rule book. And then we've also started working on some of the stretch goal stuff, including we've written the first draft of the kind of bonus adventure module that has been unlocked. And I have been doing a lot of like the graphic stuff for the character sheets and stuff for the module and stuff for the first public session that we're running on Sunday at Rolling Tales in Edmonton, which is, I learned this morning, has apparently filled up, but we're going to be running the first ever kind of open outside of our playtest group session. So I did a bunch of kind of unique pre-gen characters for that, and they all have like fully illustrated character sheets, which was probably more effort than was required or expected by anybody. But I think they turned out really cool, so I'm looking forward to being able to show those to people.
And I just realized I forgot to sign up for that session. Whoops.
Well, the good news is you'll still be able to hear all about it as we're planning another kind of update on the Kickstarter with a bunch of kind of news and photos from that after we run it.
Right on, right on. Rolling Tales is great. It's a wonderful place.
I'm very excited that there's a hobby shop close to my house. It was very nice of them to open a store near my house shortly after I moved here.
Very considerate on their part, yeah. Yeah, no, like Edmonton has if there's one thing it has an abundance of, it is, comic and hobby shops, but Rolling Tales is certainly one of my favorites among them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I've known Jay and Sylvia for a really long time now, so I'm excited that they've got got their operation up and running, and I'm really excited that I get to be part of the 1-year anniversary festivities.
Heck yeah. So, what does the average session of Hellink look like?
So we made a very goofy flowchart that is actually it's in the book itself, but it is also on the Kickstarter page. But essentially, the players are all coworkers who have been given some sort of semi-work related task that they must leave their normal jobs to take care of. And so the way we've handled the flowchart for kind of how a session will generally go is it starts with the GM makes up a gender neutral guy. They will have a problem, which they insist become the player's problem. And then the players will try and come up with solutions for how to solve that problem and figure out what they need to do. And in the sort of GM advice section of the book, which is a good chunk of the book, the actual game mechanics are pretty concise. It's a kind of a pretty minimalist system where uh, if something can't be handled by a skill roll, then that's a pretty rare situation that you've stumbled on. But so we give a lot of advice for how to make a game about people working in an office more interesting, and a lot of it is just about leaning into the hell elements and making it weird. Uh, so, for example, one of the sections is about how to kind of build the office into a place that kind of feels like a more lived in setting. And one of the key advice sections there is about you need a few like key fixtures that need to be there for kind of just the game and the office to function. But to make sure that you throw in some unique, weird thing that really reinforces that, oh, right, this is hell, and we can kind of do whatever we can think of if we can find a method to get there.
Right.
So some of the suggestions in the book are, maybe your office has some sort of dimensional portal in it that used to be a supply closet, but now it just is a portal to another dimension. Maybe you have an infestation of mutant vermin. Maybe the photocopier is fueled by blood magic, and you have to do rituals to awaken it. And there's more, but yeah, it's kind of stuff like that. Just add in that extra elements to remind the players that you're in a really weird setting where anything can either be really banal or magic, and you can kind of swing between those at will.
Yeah, oftentimes it seems to kind of be both at once.
Yeah, and I try and reinforce that as much as possible in the book, that is kind of uh, the sweet spot, I think, for the game, is to land at the intersection of everything is kind of boring and normal, but also something is weird and magical
Yeah,
that distracts from that.
like you go to get something out of the vending machine, realize it only dispenses like various writhing fiery worms or whatever. Like,
Yeah. Like there's actually in the comic there's a recurring bit where this one demon is just eating bees out of a plastic baggie, until finally he gets one that has the stinger, and then goes on a rant about stingerless bees. That is just straight up a rant about seedless grapes, with bee stingers replacing grape seeds.
very good. I see that we're drawing deeply from real experiences.
Yeah, a lot of it is very everything starts with something that is normal and kind of stupid, uh, and then escalates. So in the fourth, I think it's the fourth volume, uh, there is just like a busted chair in the office that like you can kind of use it, but it will really jack up your back, and like no one wants that. And so the entire B plot of that book turns into trying to get rid of the bad chair and pawn it off on somebody else and replace it with their normal chair. And that entirely just came from my wife's office has or had like people would kind of just change desks, like they didn't have fixed position assignments. And one day she sat down and her chair was terrible. And like after a couple hours, she realized like, oh, my back really hurts. Like, and so then she went off to just kind of like scavenge on the other cubicles on the floor and find one that had a better chair to replace it with. And so that real life story that is really like not an interesting story. It's just this chair is broken, so I went and got a better one. Turns into demons trying to do spycraft to obfuscate the reverse heisting of this terrible chair to give it to somebody else and take their own better chair back.
I like reverse heisting as a phrase. It's very good. That's fantastic. I really adore the art, by the way. Like, obviously, that is a major draw for this, and it's quite good.
Thank you. Yeah, I've had a lot of time to refine it, having worked on the series for a few years. But just in general, like it looks completely different at this point from what it did in the like kind of original black and white comics that I did like almost 15 years ago now. But even just like the art from the early strips versus the art from the current ones, uh, there's a definite shift. And there's a ton of art in the RPG book. Uh, I've kind of been operating on a design philosophy of minimum of one piece of art on every page, and if I can fit more, there is more.
Fair enough. I was going through the review copy that you sent me earlier, and I really adore the resolution mechanic. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So that is it's adapted from the Fail Marines game that we had created because we realized that in that game it is about the resolution mechanic is about your characters essentially being vastly overconfident and having to kind of rein themselves back in uh, because you are like a walking weapon that can destroy everything. And we realized that that actually adapted really nicely to a game about an office because it is a system that rewards mediocrity. You're rolling 2d6 and adding or subtracting the relevant skill, which will be a number between -1 and +3. But you want to land in the middle because that's where you'll get your best outcomes. So the way the dice system works is if your total is a 4 or less, you have just failed real hard. If you get a 5 or a 6, you have failed, but some kind of positive comes from it. A 7 or 8 is a success, and then a 9 or better is a success that causes an additional either minor or major problem to be created. So essentially, it's a system that rewards you for being as mediocre as possible so that you do not draw the ire or additional tasks associated with competence from your boss.
The classic like, hey, here's more responsibilities and no more pay.
Yeah, like, oh, you can do a task without screwing it up. Great, here's more tasks. Uh, yeah, and so that's essentially become the what in Fail Marines was generally wanton destruction has become essentially just promotions on paper
Excellent.
and in responsibility, but not in pay.
My least favorite kind of promotion.
It is everyone's least favorite kind of promotion.
Yeah. There's relatively few like comedy RPGs, so it's nice to see more entries in that space.
Yeah, I find a lot of like even when we were looking at other Zine Quest uh, like previous Zine Quest campaigns when we were setting up ours, looking for like, okay, what's the kind of information that is most valuable to give to potential backers here, because I've done all my previous crowdfunding has been in comics. So moving over to games, I wanted to get a sense of like what kind of information do backers want here, and what is stuff that I think is important because of comics, but is actually extraneous. And one of the things that we noticed was that the most common uh, the most common things we were seeing were fairly serious, or at least seriously presented um, add-ons to existing systems that have some kind of like open source rules.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, we thought that was an interesting result, because all of the RPGs we play in get stupid, and that tends to be everyone's favorite RPG stories. But most systems don't necessarily encourage that. They're kind of designed to fight stuff, uh, and so we figured either we would stand out in a like good positive way uh, as doing something that is unusual, or we would get totally buried in disinterest for not being about stabbing things. And so far, it has been very much the former, because things have gone so far much better than we had been planning for or anticipating.
Yeah, like I love seriously, tromping through the dark forest of like Lord Balzagrath with like a deeply serious tone and everything, but like sometimes you gotta get goofy. Sometimes you gotta do it on purpose, you know?
See, I like the idea of a serious RPG, but I, as a player, can't function in them because I can't not make dick jokes or what it like. My group played through Curse of Strahd recently, and the beginning of the final battle with Strahd was just us insulting him to like a cartoonish degree. Because just at one point, my character decided, I don't know who this is. I don't respect him. And it kind of just bled through to the rest of the party. Uh, to the point where Strahd, very much his presentation, all the coolness kind of got bled out of him, and he just became this like angsty castle weirdo that we had to go beat up so we could go home. And like that, because that is so consistently how RPGs I've played in have gone. One, that definitely led to uh making a comedy focused game, uh but also it led to kind of just understanding that, like, well, I don't do serious games well, and so we might as well just approach our own games with the kind of tone that we approach playing in games with, and see, like, can we build a system that kind of facilitates the kind of tone that we play with anyway. And we'll see how other people play it. I'm sure someone somewhere will run an extremely serious business Hell Inc. RPG, and I would like to know how that goes because I can't imagine it.
It's all about playing to your strengths, right?
Yeah, and I think like I've written comedy for almost a decade now. Actually, probably more than that, because I was doing comedies when I was working at the U of A newspaper too. Uh, so yeah, like I've written so much comedy that it kind of just happens automatically. So when moving into a new medium of writing a role playing game, that kind of just seemed like, yeah, that's the place I'm gonna start.
Absolutely. All right, last question I got for you. Are you gonna make a Hockey Apocalypse RPG next?
I'm thinking a lot more seriously about it than I had been in the past. I had been asked a few times by Lukasz Kowalczuk, who worked with me on the most recent Hockey Apocalypse book, which is at the printers right now. And he'd mentioned a few times that he thought it was a great setting for an RPG. And I agreed, but had no idea what that game would look like. Because, like, well, it's a hockey comic. Like, how do you make that function in a tabletop game that isn't like a board game?
Yeah.
But now having worked on this RPG with a arguably harder to uh like adapt into something fun premise, I feel like there's probably more ways to make a Hockey Apocalypse RPG work than I might have thought otherwise. So yeah, that is something that I kind of am considering. Uh, I think that it'd be quite a while away because I think I'd have to do a lot more. There'd be a lot more like mechanical testing stuff, I think, that would need to happen for that
Yeah.
because I don't know how to make the hockey part of it function in an RPG in a way that is both interesting and feels right. So I think that would a lot of iteration would need to happen with that.
Honestly, conceptually,
Um,
it's almost closer to like a small scale war game.
yeah, I've thought about doing a Hockey Apocalypse game for quite a while, but it was usually a board game, kind of in the vein of Games Workshop's Blood Bowl,
Yeah.
or like a card game or something. Uh, but yeah, now that I've kind of entered the RPG space and gotten thinking of about design as applies to that space, I think there's something to work with there. And I think at some point down the road, that is something that I would like to uh, give some more serious thought and effort into.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, Jeff, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I honestly didn't expect there to be a serious answer for Hockey Apocalypse RPG, but now I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I wouldn't have expected there to be either, because I remember when Lukash first brought it up, my response was like, I mean, yeah, that's a cool idea, but like, what does that look like? Like, how does that work? Uh, and yeah, now that I've sort of gotten thinking about it, like, oh, maybe that could.
The horrible,
And
freaky
so
pumpkin tree
far,
seed has been planted. Yes.
and so far, kind of like stumbling into the RPG space on a whim has been much better received than I expected it to be. When we launched Fail Marines, that was the most downloads of anything I've done in the first day. And then this Kickstarter for Hell Inc. We funded in less than 10 hours. And now we're a third of the way through. And like already not too far off of what we thought was our like pie in the sky stretch goal. So yeah, so Caitlin will have to write her cooking zine pretty soon.
Excellent.
But yeah, it's you know, it has been a much more welcoming entry into a completely new medium than I was expecting. So it's definitely providing a lot of encouragement to you know, keep doing stuff in this medium and keep developing these weird niche RPGs and see where that takes me.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't wait to see, honestly. Uh, well, Jeff, it's been a pleasure having you on. It's been wonderful to talk about Hell Inc., both the comic and the RPG, both of which are available as rewards for the Kickstarter. Um, yeah, if you're still watching this, please, the link is right below. Go back this. Learn about the soup drawer, because that is amazing. And, yeah, have a good night, everybody.